Hi there, this is Mark Levy, your sourdough simpleton, and I'm back to give you some more tips for things that you're asking about. One thing that I've seen mentioned on the Facebook pages and the like is a common feeling that I've killed my starter. My starter is dead. Do I have to throw it out and start all over again? What's going on? Well, the truth is that except in extraordinary times, your starter goes into what's called suspended animation if you don't feed it for a while. It's fine, it just has to be revived. So that it takes a couple days, and we're going to talk about how you do that. By the way, a little side note, if you hear a little noise under my voice today, like right there, that's the 17-year cicada Brood 10, which is out right now. And it's all over my backyard, and you're going to hear it because you hear it basically every place in the house that you go. So that's the way it is. All right, here we go. This is a starter that I have had sitting for a while. And as you can see, the starter has a very thick layer of hooch on top of it, which tells me that this has been not fed for a while. It's sleeping and dormant, if you will, and we're going to have to wake it up. So the first thing we're going to do, by the way, if you like this little top, I blew out the metal tops from the mason jars. So I got these cute little plastic ones. I'll put a link to this, if you like, in the on my website under stuff that I like to get. And I might even put it on the YouTube channel for you to see. But that's a second issue. So we're going to, first of all, we're going to pour off the hooch. I mean, there's a lot there, and we don't need to keep it. Next, we're going to stir this up a little bit just to get a little bit more liquidy. And we're really going to keep only a small amount of this starter. One technique is to revive starter by using equal amounts of starter, flour, and water, a 1-to-1-to-1 ratio. There are many ways to do it, and believe me, the more people you ask, the more ways you're going to see how to do it, and they all work. But this is how I've been doing it, and believe me, I forget starters a lot, and they sit in the fridge, so it does work. All right. So with that, I'm going to take a scale. I'll let you trust me on this one. I'm going to measure out 100 grams of starter. You can see it's kind of old and disgusting. Ooh. That's 67. You'll trust me that this is 100 without me showing you the scale, won't you? Okay. Okay, 100 grams of starter. Everything else in here, I'm going to get rid of. I'm going to use my trusty little spatula to scrape down the walls of the jar. I'll speed this process up so you don't get bored. Now, many of you are going to say, wait a minute, this is discard and you can use it. Yes, it is. For that matter, the whole jar was discard. So yes, you can certainly use this for a discard recipe. I don't happen to have one currently to do, so I'm not going to do it. But if you had a discard recipe, this is ideal to do that with. My purpose today is to revive my starter. Okay, so we're going to put the 100 grams of starter back into the jar. Boop. There we go. Every golden drop of it, kind of whitish drop of it. And next we're going to be putting some flour in. Now, there are a lot of ways to measure flour. I like a paper plate. Put a paper plate on the scale. Put the flour on the paper plate. measure my 100 grams. Good, that's 100 grams. And now we'll take that flour and put it into, give you a close-up on this, put it into our jar, and I can use the paper plate as a little scoopy funnel so it goes right in. No mess, nothing to clean. And now we'll take this flour and starter, and we're going to add 100 grams of room temperature water. Okay, I measured this already. Give me a break. I'm not going to measure everything on the screen for you. Well, kind of. And then we mix it up. Now, what's going to happen is the organisms, the yeast and the friendly bacteria in the residual starter will find a buffet table of new food to eat with the flour that we just gave it. And it's going to start to regenerate itself. Now this is going to take a couple of feedings to get it back to an active starter, but that should only take maybe a day or 3. We'll see how that goes. So right now, this is sitting at about, whoops, where's the thing? About the, maybe 2 cup level? No, 1 cup level, about the 1 cup level. And I'm gonna set this on the counter for a bunch of hours, and we're going to come back to it in maybe a couple hours. We'll see how it looks. I'll let you know how long it took, but we want to see this thing come up and get a little bit bigger. So we're going to let this sit, gently covered, loosely covered, not tight, just loose. Keep the bugs out. No cicada in the house, and we'll see you after it sits for a while. Well, it's been about 6 hours since we put up this starter to rejuvenate, to wake it from its slumber. And at this point in time, it has almost doubled in size. If you look inside, take the lid off, you'll see that the surface is covered with bubbles. It's nice and soft looking. It's exactly where we want it to be at this point in time. So the first thing which we're going to do is to take some of this off. And you'll recall we put in 100 grams of starter, 100 grams of flour, 100 grams of water. That's 300 grams. So we're going to remove half of that, or 150 grams at this point in time. So we'll stir it down a little bit. Take the bubbles out. Remember that the volume is bubbles. So even though it looks like it's doubled in volume, it's the same weight. You can't make matter where there is no matter. So that's why we measure starter, especially starter, in grams weight and not volume. Because if you didn't stir it down, it would be quite a different volume. Okay, so that's 150 grams of starter taken off, which leaves us with 150 grams left here in the jar. To that, we're going to add, you guessed it, 100 grams of water at room temperature and 100 grams of flour. Using our paper plate scoop, as it were. We'll stir this up, and we're going to set it aside again in the room. Now my room temperature is about 75 degrees right now, so it'll be fine. We're going to leave it from now until maybe 5 hours from now, and then I'm going to put it in the fridge overnight. Tomorrow we're going to do the same thing. Take half of it away and rejuvenate it with another dose of starter. And we'll show you what it all looks like when this all comes out. What we're going to have is a nice active starter to use for our next project. Now, 2 things. First of all, what's the stuff in here? Okay, so this is technically discard, although it's a little more active discard than the one we had 6 hours ago. And certainly you can use this for a project, a discard project if you like. it's perfectly fine. You can certainly use that. Let's realize the difference between starter and discard is the discard is unfed starter. So there's no magic here. People keep jars of discard in their refrigerator, and I guess you can do that. It's just unfed starter. And it doesn't add any real lift to the product, but does give the flavor. So you can do what you like. There are rules, but people break them all the time. So for right now, we're going to set this aside to rest for the next couple of 5 hours or so, put it in the fridge overnight, and we'll see if we can talk to you about it tomorrow. Have a good evening, and we'll see you tomorrow. Good morning. It's another day, and our starter has been sitting in the refrigerator overnight, and then this morning, I took it out of the refrigerator, and I've left it sitting on the counter for about the past 4 hours. If you take a look now, you'll see that it has risen significantly higher than it was. I put a piece of tape where the starter was when I put it into the refrigerator last night, and you'll see now that it's more than doubled in height. So this is a nice active starter. We're going to give it one more kick today, and we'll talk about what you may have to do with your starter depending on how it's doing. Just to be sure, we'll take a look at it, and it's beautiful. It's nice, soft, full of bubbles, and has a wonderful aroma. So we know this starter is doing well. So once again, just as last time, we're going to stir this down. Gets rid of all the bubbles, and all of a sudden it goes down from almost filling this jar to about half full. So when we started to revitalize the starter, used 100 grams of starter, 100 grams of flour, and 100 grams of water. That's 300 grams. Then we took half of that off, which would be about 150 off, and added another 100 and 100 of water and flour. So that's 200. So from 150, we should now have, let's all do the math together here, 350, give or take. Okay, so we're going to, right, because 2 and 1 is 3. So we're going to take off, again, about 200 grams from this, and that's mostly just to revitalize it, to give it some more food and allow it to grow some more. I don't want to take this down too far because, quite frankly, it's doing very well. So we'll take 200 off of here, and this will be a nice starter to use now to make something with. If you wanted to make something which required 240, which would basically be a cup of starter, you could do that as well. Right now I don't need to. And once again, I'm going to do the prime sourdough sin of wasting starter. If you have nothing else to do with this, quite frankly, you give it to a friend. Let them have their own starter, because this is an ideal preparation to begin a new starter. So that's 200 grams, and we're going to get rid of that and use it for another day. Let's take the tape off of here so we know where we are. And once again, we're going to add 100 grams of flour, conveniently measured in a paper plate. So you can just kind of funnel it right into the jar. I'm a member of the No Mess School of Kitchenery. And 100 grams of room temperature water. And we'll mix that up nicely and set it on the counter to rise for a couple of hours. My kitchen's at about 75 degrees Fahrenheit. You could do the conversion for yourself at home. Or maybe I'll show it to you on the side. And that's sufficient to allow sourdough to rise. If it's much colder, if your kitchen's much colder than 70 degrees Fahrenheit, you may have trouble having it rise, in which case using a warming drawer or putting a pan of warm water in the oven, turned off oven please, could create an environment nice for it to rise. But in this kitchen, this will be no problem. So this starter basically came back to life after 2 days and 3 feedings. Yours may take longer. Quite frankly, if your starter is a little bit older or it's been sitting around for a while, this one sat for about a month, a little more than a month before we played with it. But if it's been sitting around for longer, it may take longer. The key thing is to feed it on a regular basis for a couple of days running and let it rise between feedings. So I fed it twice yesterday and once today. By the end of today, this is going to be ready to roll. I may stick it in the fridge until the next day or two and then use it. If I'm going to do that, I may well feed it ahead of time. So you take it out in the morning, and if there's room in the jar, you don't have to discard any, but if there's not room, you may want to discard some, and then refeed it so that it's nice and active when you're going to go to use it. And really, you can take starter and you can dry it out and store it dried out and then reconstitute it, and it should be fine. So you didn't kill your starter. Don't worry about that. It just needs some TLC, some food, some attention, and it recovers very, very nicely. Be curious to know your experiences. Please do post them on the Facebook page or on the YouTube channel, and look for more things to come from the Sourdough Simpleton, including, I'll tip you, I'm working on a recipe for a bread that should be, well, let's just say it'll be a little bit different. So more to follow, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining. Please do subscribe to this channel and visit the Facebook page as well. See you next time.